Now, tonight, there's no way I can report this without mentioning our own reporting on this very show, because it has become part of the legal news itself. Today, a witness linked to Trump's money man, now at the center of this probe, Allen Weisselberg, is saying that Weisselberg, is behind a push to evict her that is retribution for her speaking out. The witness, you may recognize, his former daughter-in-law, who made news with her detailed comments in an interview on The Beat this week, which came on the eve of the bombshell news that there is a new grand jury, signaling the risk of indictments or jail time in this very case. She went on to explain that, quote, I spoke about the Trump payroll corporation on The Beat. Weisselberg saying that after she spoke about those issues on The Beat, including described potential or alleged crimes, she was threatened with a sudden eviction notice. Now, remember, investigators have spoken to Michael Cohen and her as they gather evidence in this case. Here is some of what she told me in that interview she just referenced.
He started immediately hiding money in escrow, taxes, tax fraud, tax evasion. When Donald says numbers are certain things, and then Allen says numbers are certain things, they're not adding up. Confidentially having them cut checks that would make him vulnerable to tax evasion, tax fraud, compensation, gift taxes.
That is some of what Weisselberg was telling us. Now she says those allegations and her speaking about what she says is her truthful knowledge of the situation got the attention of the man at the center of this probe. So here are her new comments today.
Allen Weisselberg is on my lease. Yesterday I was served at, to leave my apartment within the next 7 days. So it's a threat. It's a threat.
You were served to leave your apartment within the next 7 days.
Yep. They're kicking me out.
He's trying to force you out of your apartment.
Yes.
What was it specifically, do you think, that you've done or said that has caused this to happen?
So Monday night on another network, I appeared with Michael Cohen. I spoke about details about the Trump Payroll Corp on that show. And so I spoke about how I know he's hiding money in escrow and confidentially having checks cut, hiding tax crimes. There's definitely tax fraud. There's definitely tax evasion. And, I think that there's just a lot of, for the first time, they seem really nervous.
That is just wow. I mean, she's an insider. She says they seem really nervous. She alleges this direct retaliation for what she said right on this program this week. This is the key witness. We interviewed her journalistically to learn what she is telling these prosecutors, who are now newly fortified, strengthened legally, if you will, by this tool of the grand jury. And now we know she's telling them that Trump's money man did crime for Trump. I can't confirm for you whether that's true yet or not. I can tell you, though, from our reporting, from what we've gathered and what she now is making news about, what she already told us, this is a big deal. This is what she's telling investigators. If she or someone can back up that allegation that they're doing crime over at the Trump org with evidence, well, this thing is moving fast. Now, I want to just run back the key part there of the kind of claims she's making. Take a look.
There's definitely tax fraud. There's definitely tax evasion. And, I think that there's just a lot of, for the first time, they seem really nervous.
There's definitely tax fraud. There's definitely tax evasion. Those are her claims, rooted in what she's lived through and what she knows. And it's certainly not making her life any easier, because she says she's already facing retaliation for the comments she made on the program here. Now, we contacted Allen Weisselberg's attorney about all this. We're always ready to learn anything they want to say. Mr. Weisselberg can come on the program, but in this situation, he may not. But perhaps the attorney wants to give context or even a denial of the allegation that they are trying to evict her or have some sort of retaliation for her free speech rights to talk. I can tell you the Weisselberg attorney had no comment at this time. When you take this all together, you see why we have been following the case this way. If you happen to watch The Beat regularly, you will know that we were on this week because we saw signs, evidence that this was escalating. Then we reported and confirmed what the Washington Post had first reported, the grand jury, which changes everything. And now you see in a matter of days the level of response to that. I will say the level of response, allegedly, although again, the Weisselberg side not denying or rebutting any of what his former daughter-in-law is saying. That when she came out and said words about what goes on at Trump.org and what he's doing, she says he retaliated to silence her. We're joined right now by someone who worked directly in this powerful Manhattan DA's office, Danielle Alonso, Nick Ackerman, a former Watergate special prosecutor who also worked at SDNY and has extensive experience with these kind of complex cases, and Emily Bazelon, a legal writer with New York Times Magazine. Thanks to each of you for joining us. I'm going to start with you, Nick, because some of this playing out with hardball and public back and forth is reminiscent of some of the kinds of high-profile cases you've had to handle. What do you think of what Ms. Weisselberg says is alleged retaliation for the comments she first made on this show?
Well, it very well could be witness tampering or obstruction of justice. I mean, Alan Weisselberg is the guarantor on her lease, the lease that she is being evicted in 7 days, which is unheard of in New York. It is so rare I don't think you could actually do it because a court wouldn't evict somebody in 7 days. But the idea that he's trying to do this amounts to witness tampering. It amounts to obstruction of justice. And what it comes down to is whether he's doing it with a corrupt intent, an improper purpose, meaning that he's doing it to silence her or to somehow influence her testimony. And that is what this looks like. Now, we need more facts. We need to know exactly how this threat came forward, what was said, how did she get it, what was the notice that she received, who was responsible for sending that notice. These are all questions, as a prosecutor, I would be asking. But on the surface,
Nick, let me ask you something very straightforward, and I'm not trying to be overly simplistic here, but if you're accused in the public square of these type of crimes, tax evasion and other malfeasance at the Trump.org, and there's an open grand jury investigation, if you have evidence to rebut it, wouldn't the best course, even though many people would tell the client to stay quiet, wouldn't the best course be for the lawyers to start explaining why it's not true? I mean, why aren't we hearing that?
Well, at least the lawyers could do it. But again, I mean, they're sitting back waiting to determine what their defense actually is here. I mean, they don't know what facts yet the government has. They don't know what they have to rebut, really. If they go out there and try and rebut every single allegation that comes forward, they're just going to tie themselves in knots and make their client look a lot worse. So as a general matter, at least in my practice, I never make statements to the press concerning a client's matter or try to...
So you wouldn't read, and I say this also in fairness, you wouldn't read much one way or the other into the fact that, although we gave the Weisselberg side an opportunity, that they're not saying anything.
No, I wouldn't read much into that. But I would read something into the fact that this woman is saying that she's being retaliated against, that she's being evicted from an apartment where Alan Weisselberg is the guarantor on the rent. I mean, that just on the surface smacks of obstruction of justice and witness tampering, which are both federal crimes and state crimes. Witness tampering in the federal system carries a sentence of 20 years in prison. I mean, it is more serious than the tax evasion. This is clearly one of those cases where the cover-up could wind up being much worse for Alan Weisselberg than the actual crime that he's being investigated for.
Spoken like a Nixon prosecutor. Let me play a little bit of Michael Cohen talking about the prospect of cooperation. What is the word or subject that investigators asked most about?
Alan Weisselberg. They're going to flip. They're going to flip on each other like it's going out of style.
Daniel, you've done these kind of investigations out of that very office. There's much we don't hear in the public realm, but these witnesses told us the kind of people that we're being asked about. Weisselberg, the Trump kids, less so, we were told, at least by Jennifer, less so questions about, say, Giuliani or Jared Kushner. So we were sort of getting the outline of at least some of the topics. What do you think of everything we just discussed, her new comments, as well as what investigators are looking at?
Well, I think we're maybe getting ahead of ourselves. For one thing, there is no such crime as obstruction of justice in the New York State system. There is witness tampering, but based on the facts that we've laid out here, it's not even close to made out. It's possible that Alan Weisselberg had something to do with evicting her. And then if you can connect the dots that's in order to prevent her from communicating information if she's about to be called as a witness. And the New York laws are not very broad in this area. They're nothing like the federal laws that Nick was talking about. So I don't think there's a reason to ask questions. Sure. I mean, why did that happen?
Let's pause on that.
Yeah.
Daniel, let's pause on that point, which is you're talking about, again, that to remind everyone, there's a lot of different probes. There's a probe down in Georgia. There were federal investigations in the Mueller probe. That's where Cohen was handed off to SDNY. You're making an important distinction that, in your view, because this is in the local side, the DA's office, and that because the eviction, however unsavory it may sound like a bullying tactic, but you're making the point that if it is an otherwise lawful proceeding, under your view of New York law, that wouldn't rise to the level of tampering.
Well, without many more facts, including that she's about to be called as a witness, that Weisselberg was behind this, that he did it in order to somehow prevent her from communicating what she knew to the proceeding, which would be the grand jury in this case. So we're a long way from that leap. That said, sure, anything's possible. I think the more serious thing for Alan Weisselberg to worry about is what Michael Cohen was talking about. They're obviously looking at the Trump organization and its accounting. They're not looking at Trump as president, really, except for the fact that the Stormy Daniels payment happened during that time. But they're really focusing on the Trump organization. And who's the most important person in an accounting fraud investigation? Alan Weisselberg.